Praise the Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to today's explainer. Today we're diving into this really profound spiritual concept, straight from our source text, the biblical day of reward. And honestly, if you've ever sat there wondering if your faith, your endless patience, or your good deeds are actually being seen by anyone, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Right out of the gate, our source material hits on an incredibly relatable human dilemma. We've all been there, right? You experience this deep, heavy weariness when you're doing good, praying constantly and serving others, but you see absolutely zero immediate results. It is just human nature to want to see the fruits of our labor, like right this second.
So, are you tired of doing good without seeing the reward? Our text tackles this exact feeling head-on. The core promise here is that doing good in faith is literally never wasted. Sure, the payback might not be as instant as your standard 30-day paycheck, but as we're going to see, it is absolutely guaranteed.
Section 1. The Day of Reward. Your labor is not in vain.
Okay, so the core message here is that God is a living rewarder. He sees every single act of devotion, no matter how tiny or hidden it is from the rest of the world. Our source breaks down the Hindi word pratifal, which translates to reward or recompense. And looking at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35, we see this isn't just some standard worldly paycheck, it's a divine, guaranteed promise. The text strongly urges believers, do not throw away your courage. Don't give up just because the wait feels long, because a massive reward is locked in.
And anchoring this whole idea is Jeremiah 31:16. The source reassures us that your weeping, your tears, and all that hard work you're doing in faith, it will absolutely yield a harvest. It's just an incredibly powerful reminder to wipe your tears because your ultimate reward is already on its way.
The crucial takeaway for this section, drawn straight from 1 Corinthians 15:58, is that labor in the Lord is literally never wasted. The text enthusiastically encourages us to stand firm, to be totally unshakable in our devotion. Every single prayer, every act of service, every quiet moment of faith is being recorded, and it will be rewarded.
Moving on to Section 2, Divine Justice versus Worldly Revenge, Leaving Vengeance to God.
Now, this shifts our focus to a really stark contrast. We're looking at how the modern world handles injustice versus how the Bible actually commands believers to act. On one side, you've got the worldly approach, right? The classic tit for tat or an eye for an eye. But on the other side is the biblical approach, leaving vengeance to God and actually forgiving your enemies. The source emphasizes that believers absolutely have to avoid that worldly urge to retaliate. Basically, if you want the true reward, you've got to step back and let God handle the recompense.
And God's justice addresses the whole shebang. He deals with the arrogant, the wicked, the quick-tempered, and those who reject the truth. The source goes rapid-fire through these biblical truths to assure us that God is actively handling these injustices. What does that mean for you? It means you don't have to carry the heavy, exhausting burden of taking revenge yourself. God has it completely covered.
To really drive this point home, the source points to a super visceral story. Acts 1:18 describes Judas. He bought a field with the quote-unquote reward of his unjust deed, and, well, the consequences were pretty severe and completely inevitable. It serves as this stark, powerful reminder that the rewards of wickedness are always ultimately destructive.
But let's contrast that with King David. In 2 Samuel 22:21, David famously declares that the Lord rewarded him purely according to his righteousness and the cleanness of his hands. It's a beautiful parallel. It shows us that while wickedness has its destructive end, righteousness yields a divine, truly life-giving reward.
Section 3. Trusting in Divine Timing. God's Schedule versus Human Expectations. Okay, so trying to understand God's timing for justice and rewards can sometimes clash pretty violently with our modern need for instant gratification. As the source points out in a really relatable way, God's timeline is not your predictable 30-day salary cycle. In everyday life, sure, we expect a paycheck at the end of the month or a guaranteed payoff after a 5-year contract. But God, He operates on an eternal and sometimes very surprising schedule, and that requires some profound patience from us.
The text leans into the profound wisdom of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 to unpack this. There is a natural progression of seasons in life, right? There's a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to weep, and a time to laugh. The source uses this wisdom to prove that absolutely every single event in our lives, including the arrival of our ultimate reward, has its own divinely appointed time.
Plus, Acts 17:31 reminds us that God has already circled a specific day on the calendar. He's appointed a day on which He's going to judge the world in righteousness through Jesus Christ.
So the ultimate justice and the ultimate reward, they're already on the schedule. We just have to trust the timeline.
Section 4. Conditions for true reward. How to act while you wait.
So while we're waiting on God's perfect timing, the source explains that the Bible actually lays out some very specific conditions and actions required to please Him. Step 1, you have to have unwavering faith. Hebrews 11 tells us flat out that without it, it's impossible to please God. Step 2, you need to give and serve in secret. That means doing your charity quietly rather than fishing for human applause. And step 3, you must endure. You just cannot throw in the towel when the journey gets tough.
The text gets even more specific here. The actual actions God rewards include praying behind closed doors, doing charity secretly, and loving your enemies without expecting a single thing in return. But what's really cool is the reference to Matthew 10:42. It says that even the absolute simplest act, like just giving a cup of cold water to a disciple, guarantees a reward that will never, ever be lost. How amazing is that?
Finally, Section 5. God is our shield, the ultimate protector and prize.
Our source powerfully reassures us that God isn't just some distant judge waiting at the finish line. He's an active, present protector in our lives right now. This is captured so perfectly in Genesis 15:1. God speaks to Abraham and declares, "I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." Notice that? God Himself is the ultimate prize. He's the protective shield standing guard around you while you wait. And He is the exceedingly great reward you've been waiting for all along.
Now, as we navigate this waiting period, the source offers a super practical piece of advice. You need to discern the source of your trials. It challenges believers to thoughtfully examine their difficulties. Are you experiencing God's loving discipline, or are you facing a direct attack from the enemy? But here's the good news. In either scenario, the text encourages you to just trust God to be your sturdy shield. Echoing the really impassioned final prayer from the source material, "Lord, be our shield against all attacks," the text earnestly asks God to raise His shield, to protect believers from sickness, from financial struggles, from crushing anxiety, and spiritual attacks. It's about keeping them safe and secure until that glorious day of reward. And that brilliantly brings us to a final, challenging question for you to ponder today. Will you keep your faith strong until your day of reward actually arrives? Because as this explainer has shown us through the source text, your labor is not in vain. Divine justice is coming, and God's timing is absolutely perfect. So hold on to your faith, do not give up, wait patiently until your ultimate reward is finally revealed. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and whatever you do, keep your eyes on the prize.